We're live.
Oh,
Yeah. Welcome everybody to Brain Milk. If you're watching this on the podcast, um, I wanted to start off just this. I kind of watched this Jared Kushner's plan in Gaza. So annoying. Um, he did a meeting. I think he was at Davos everywhere, probably doing a bunch of meetings, taking like. Actually, you know what? Maybe the issue is me. I don't think I have my headbuds in. That's why. My bad. Here we go. But what do you as his plan? Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. What do you make of Gaza's plan? You know, he had zones, which I guess different people and companies will probably be building their own zones, which always works well in history, right? You look at like World War II and like the war Berlin zones and stuff like that. So these aren't even real countries that invaded and conquered and liberated a country, but they're private companies that are probably just going to screw over Palestinians forever and Gazans. He claimed Jared Kushner claimed 100% employment. They imagine themselves getting 100% employment rebuilding Gaza. And their plan is to kind of build it like in Abu Dhabi, but like, okay, 100% employment of what? Like construction jobs, building hotels and resorts and all the things like for their Gaza plan. I mean, is this really going to be a return to real society with a lot of Gazans being like doctors and all the civil servants and, controlling their own destiny, having their own political system that they're in charge of? And like on top of that, Israel just killed all of their families, and now they're gonna they're gonna be working for Jared Kushner and a bunch of like Israeli firms, and then firms linked to
Yeah,
Trump. Like, what
and
do you make
and,
of all this?
and being in like customer facing jobs as rich Europeans come on vacation, it's stupid. The hundred
Yeah,
percent employment thing is funny too because it's like really like does that mean no one can quit their job? Like is that like indentured servitude?
yeah,
Like you would
yeah,
think that some people would be in between jobs. They're like, I really don't like being at the desk at this Hotel Hilton. I want to try something else. So, I mean,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, your only other option is like concrete work for a hotel that will have Trump's name on it someday or something.
I
And on
mean,
top of that, their vision is kind of like Saudi Arabia and Abu Dhabi, places that like are accused regularly of using like modern slaves to build everything, right? Like they steal people's passports, and then they can't leave and can't do anything. There's a lot of people that die, like when like those Gulf states kind of host big events like the World Cup or whatever. A lot of people die. A lot of laborers are just working in insane conditions.
Yeah, that's true. Then they bring over like a lot of Filipino people, Indian workers and stuff, workers from Southeast Asia. They don't pay them a lot. You already brought up the fact they like take their passports and hide them so they
Yeah.
can't leave. Yeah,
And
I
what do
mean
you do
it's
with Gazans who like don't even have citizenship? Like they don't even have passports to begin with, I guess, right? Because it's not like Israel and the rest of like America is going to be really recognizing like some kind of Palestinian citizenship, you know?
yeah, and if they don't have any citizenship, can they really get visas? Like, is there any government
Right.
down there that'll let them leave? And then, yeah, I mean it's pretty stupid. It's like I mean the idea, I guess, of trying to make Gaza a nice place to live and then build it and economically develop it for the people of Gaza, but like it's so corrupt because it's like obviously you can see the Trump family and Kushner and his friends and people he knows are going to be the ones siphoning all the money out. Like all the hotels and buildings are going to be owned by rich Americans and Russians and Israelis and Europeans and
Yeah.
stuff. So
Right.
it's not going to benefit like the Gazans and stuff. And you brought up a point like how many people have like PTSD in Gaza? Like, is that what they need right
Right.
now? 5-star hotels in Gaza, or like actual like humanitarian and social help and food
Yeah.
assistance? You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Can you imagine the managers like forcing the employees to like smile at all like the really rich Israeli guests who will be coming and
Oh
like
yeah,
just milking the entire like Gaza strip for like all it's worth and all of its like potential real estate now that it's been leveled and is like I guess ripe for fresh new buildings.
yeah, and it's horrible. Like the idea that okay, we're going to destroy a country, and now instead of like the Marshall Plan, we're going to help you rebuild. Nope, we're just going to build our own hotels and we're going to suck all the money out, and you're
Yeah.
not going to get any of it. So yeah, not a great way to make friends and influence people in the Middle East, I think.
Yeah.
But
And kind of going off that, Benjamin Netanyahu, is kind of still saying he's using the like from the river to the sea line himself now. So like,
that's great.
yeah, there's really no plan to have a Palestinian state. And then, like, what's next? Are we going to take the West Bank? Just like what is the I don't know. It's like Netanyahu is basically selling his soul to just steal a bunch of land and make like a much bigger, more secure Israel, I guess. But at what cost to the Israeli people, right? Like, is how long for how long are people going to be boycotting businesses because of Israeli ties and because of everything that's going on? Like, how long will Jews that don't even live in Israel, have nothing to do with the policy, kind of be punished for in other countries and judged, and like just rampant anti-Zionism that's going, or not even anti-Zionism, because there's shades of that like, yeah, what Israel's doing is clearly wrong with the Palestinians, but certainly anti-Semitism that isn't always necessarily fair, especially when it's like countries in America where you're just Jewish, so you have to answer for everything Israel does when you're not Israeli and you've lived your entire life in America. It's like, at what cost is Netanyahu building his kind of like greater Israel plan, right? If they're just going to be a pariah, and then like Gen Z, like everybody on social media that's just seen years of these videos of all of these horrific like war crimes and human rights violations, like at what cost? That everybody hates Israel and wants nothing to do with Israel, and you're just going to get like all of these oligarchs who have their own kind of bloody histories in their own countries that go vacation in this place that has obviously a resort town for just rich oligarchs from all around the world that butcher their people
Yeah,
and
it is.
others.
No, it is absurd. There's an idea that I've been kind of thinking about a lot lately, and it's like, if you think of the United Nations and everything, all the global institutions and stuff, you're like, oh, the global order this, we got to protect the global international order. And it kind of begs the question of like, what's the point of the global order if this kind of stuff happens and then the global order doesn't do anything about it? And I think like Israel and Gaza and the Palestinian cause is kind of a great example of that, is like, you know, what is going on in this world that like we've just lived with like for 60 years now, Gaza and Israel basically going and fighting wars and conflicts with each other. There's terrorism. Israel, to some extent, is kind of a police state, at least on its borders with like the West Bank and Gaza. And it's kind of absurd. So yeah, it's weird. This world's so crazy that the Kushner plan and developing Gaza just to have rich Americans make money. I mean, it's kind of absurd, but I don't know where I'm going with that, other than the fact that like you look around the world and like,
Yeah.
for example, like you look at Venezuela, and it's like it's kind of odd that like the whole world has just kind of stood by and done nothing while a country of 32 million people have squandered, a couple people in the government have squandered the nation's wealth, squandered the productivity, squandered the lives of
Mhm.
millions of people. And then it's like, what kind of global order do we live in anyway, that you have a country that for 25 years isn't even able to make money off like the resources that you can just pluck from the ground, right? It's just crude
Yeah.
oil. You just suck it up and refine it a little bit. You don't even need to do it. You just need to put it in an oil tanker. But it's just like it's absurd to me in the world that like we've just abetted a country have like 70% of its GDP get like clusterfucked by its own government. And then you have a quarter of the population leave. And it's like every country surrounding Venezuela, even coming up to the Rio Grande, right in America, like we're just dealing with all these consequences constantly, and we just do nothing to fix it. And, bringing it back to Gaza, it's like obviously building up hotels is not going to fix Gaza. Making it like a nice luxury place in the Mediterranean is a stupid
With high walls,
idea.
keeping out all the
Yeah.
people who built it.
Yeah.
And
But
ostensibly it's to fund their rehabilitation.
yeah, it's like the weird thing about the Trump administration is there's always like a kernel of like a good idea that like on the face of it, like it's a little logical. It's like, oh, here's a part of the world they've been fighting for decades. There's terrorism. There's animosities. They can't figure out how to govern themselves, right? They had democratic elections and they basically voted in a terrorist group. And, obviously it
Yeah.
probably wasn't fair. And the terrorist group's not going to give power. And it's like, is this a better outcome? Like marginally? Yes. Like it is probably a better outcome if Gaza is a developed place where other people actually give a shit about it. But it's like, is just taking all the land, building 5-star hotels, and then just assuming that all the Palestinians are going to be happy, ground level, like public
Yeah.
facing, like, smiling people handing out beers to Americans and the
Right.
Kushner family and the Trump family for the next 60 years. Like, I think that's stupid, but I don't know. It's weird because like the kernel of a good idea is there. Like, should the whole world step in and do something about Gaza? Because Israel's not doing it by themselves and they're leveling it block by block and block. But, at least Joe Biden, like, all the hate Democrats and Joe Biden got for Israel and Palestine, like at least Joe Biden actually gave a fuck about
Yeah.
Palestinians, told Netanyahu to stop.
Yeah.
Netanyahu didn't give a fuck, but like Trump's just like, oh, maybe we can make it nice. Again, kernel of a good idea, but like in the dumbest, like
Yeah.
worst way possible.
Yeah, kind of going off of the destruction of the rules-based American-led order. What did you make of the buzz about Mark Carney, Canadian Prime Minister's speech at Davos, kind of saying that like there is we're like we basically lived out the last era and now we're in a new era of just like insane, untrustworthy great powers. And so now it's like all the middle tier countries that'll have to kind of band together to keep like, I guess, the idea of like liberal democracy and maybe the free people, like the free world or something like that. Do you think that there's a lot of small countries that have to band together now that we're in a multipolar world where America, Russia, and China are basically, it's like the weak must suffer what they must or
Yeah.
whatever, is there any, was he cooking with that? What do you think?
Well, I think to some extent, like there's going to be a lot of things. Like if you just look at the face of the relationship between America and Europe, Australia, New Zealand, like Western countries, not necessarily Western geographically, but institutionally, like it is a fact that like I think that it's a good thing that on most issues we're probably mostly aligned. Like
Yeah.
you cut out global warming, you cut out the stupid social culture war, like bullshit, like the DEI stuff, but like we're not really going to have like a massive fight with like Germany or the UK or Australia or South Korea on most issues.
America in that sense?
Yeah. Like, so in some respects, like, I think it is good if a lot of like the old great powers or, the middle countries, as you say, like band together and continue working and promoting like things like liberalism and human values and stuff and like fair trade. Like, I think that's a good thing. Obviously, America is probably going to peter like left and right, assuming we continue to have fair elections. But like, obviously any Democrat and a lot of other Republicans you can imagine, especially ones who aren't MAGA, would probably be still continue to be aligned with European countries and Japan and South Korea on most issues. And then one thing I was thinking about specifically is like, I get what his argument was, but it'll be interesting to see because I was thinking specifically financially, like they're talking about how we need to get off the dollar, we need to get off the US military. And it's kind of interesting. I want to know what you think about this. Like, do you think Europe, Canada, Australia, like, can they get off the dollar? Can they get off the US military? And how long will it take?
That's a good question. Military, I guess right off the bat, it's unfortunate that like so many countries will have to invest in a military and they'll probably want to have their own nuclear weapons, like just to hedge all their bets, especially if they can't depend on an American nuclear umbrella. So like right off the bat, it sucks of how much economic redundancies there will be of just having these militaries that like 10 years ago, nobody imagined Europe would ever really need their own nukes because why would America and Europe like ever backstab each other? Um, and what was your question? What was the other part of the question? Um,
Financial. There's a lot of talk about
Oh
how
yeah,
other
in terms
countries are
of
going
the
to start.
dollar, I
Mhm.
mean that's the empire killer throughout history, right? Because like one after another, it was the Portuguese that made all the money with like the Dutch East India Company and the first like real colonies and trade routes, and then they lasted like what, like 150 years or some 200 years. Then the Spanish took over when they kind of depleted. Spanish got a lot of wealth. They had the military. Everyone was dependent on kind of Spanish setting the financial rules of the road for world commerce. And then the British Empire obviously took over, and then America's had it. And you look at it, and it's almost like, they kind of have
Well, quick
150 to,
quick
yeah, go
nitpick.
ahead.
Nitpick. The Spanish Empire wasn't really into commerce. They're just straight up stealing silver straight from the ground.
Well,
They weren't
that's
really
true. But
trading
yeah,
anything.
but we're
Yeah.
another, a lot of the
Yeah.
other countries of Europe are like dependent on that trade, and they were obviously rich in the resources they were plundering. So that obviously kind of dominated European trade, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it would
Well, I've got an
behoove them. And
interesting.
some people think that that's why Trump kind of backed down on Denmark and Greenland a little bit. Is that they like Sweden pulled out something like $100 billion or
Yeah,
something
I think it
out
was
of treasury.
Denmark pulled 100 million out of
No, I know, yeah, but
treasury.
Sweden took out way more, was
Oh, really?
threatening to. But there were like real threats that actually kind of called Trump's bluff. And some people speculate that it was like just looking at like what that might do to the economy if all of a sudden every European country stops paying off our debt. And like that's a thing that like it sucks when you explain to people who are apathetic and don't really know much about politics. It's just like Trump can do literally massive lasting damage by ruining all of our friendships and alliances and things like the world getting off of the dollar for oil supplies, like New York City no longer being the financial capital of the entire world. Like all of these things are, can be temporary, and all these countries can go elsewhere. And on top of that, Trump's whole plan of like stopping China and being tough, but like, isn't China just, do you think China just can't believe their luck that America is just shooting its own hegemony in the fucking face right now? And like China literally has to do nothing. But now countries like Germany, the UK, France, they're like, well, if we can't depend on the US, we're going to stop doing these sanctions on China and we'll make some trade deals there to recoup what we're losing off of the tariffs that Trump's just willy-nilly on a day describing it like 25% or 50%, back to 10 or 25%. Macron offended me somehow, right? So like
Yeah.
it's a good idea for the rest of the world to like disconnect from America. And obviously, like, are we trustworthy ever again? Even if Democrats win like the next three presidential elections in a row, like again in 2036, like 10,000 Wisconsins who don't pay attention to politics can vote in like a crazy monarchist like wannabe dictator, just ruin everything. That like no matter how many Democrat presidents you have, can any foreign country just depend that like our electorate is not just literally insane and will vote for something that it will just bring utter chaos to the entire world order? That again, I can't emphasize enough, makes us rich, makes us powerful. And it's like, the whole thing with China, like we only have say around the world when Europe totally agrees with us and goes along with all of our sanctions. If Germany and the UK are like, fuck you, we're going to do whatever trade we want with China, don't tell us what to do, bitch. Like, then our sanctions don't mean anything. Then we stop having that soft power or even like financial hard power, right?
Well, if we sanction them or they violate our sanctions, we can still keep them from using the dollar. But that's neither here nor there.
But that doesn't, I mean, aren't we essentially being saved by so many countries depending on the dollar as being a
Oh no,
stable
absolutely.
financial
It gives us
investment? So that like if they stop doing that, we stop being able to just print endless money to have as big a debt as apparently
yeah.
we can.
Yeah, and frankly, like, having $40 trillion of debt is a terrible time to start fucking with your
Yeah.
long-term interest rates and
Yeah,
your debt
right.
servicing payments. What I was going to say is it's going to be
Yeah.
interesting to see because one of the things I was thinking about is like I was wondering about the extent to which how much bite, this is an important question, how much bite do European like governments, whether it's their federal, like state or local level, and then a bunch of private institutions that buy the US government debt, how much teeth do these like threats actually have? Because for example, if you had a country like let's say Germany like actually start selling massive amounts of US government debt, it's going to tank the market value of all the debt and all the bonds, and so they're all going to be tanking their own money. So it's kind of like a suicide in a way. Like, and the same thing with private institutions
Yeah,
around
but isn't
Europe.
that the point with Trump being such a fucking dick that people just want to be a dick back? And we're like, oh, you're going to fuck with us constantly? Like,
Well,
we'll
the
see you in
other
hell, buddy.
question, I mean, the second level of analysis might be something like, okay, let's say they take out $8 trillion of U.S. government debt and bonds, and it's like, well, what are they going to put that money in? So, like, you kind of come into a problem of like, is there $8 trillion, $12 trillion, 14, 20, $40 trillion worth of shit to buy in the global economy right now? Like, I mean, a lot of them would probably start, investing in things like gold. Like, let's have the price of gold go to
Or
like
Saudi
18.
Arabia's
Yeah.
the line, that's the new investment for everyone that wants to leave
Yeah.
the American financial
Yeah, I
system.
mean, so in the long term, I mean, this is bad. A lot of countries, a lot of companies, a lot of private institutions in Europe and around the world are going to stop buying U.S. government debt, which will start jacking up the debt servicing costs we have to pay when the value, or not the value, but the price of servicing our debt goes up. So that's going to be a problem. I think in the short term, they're probably not going to all like fire sale, because then as like, as countries start selling, like a lot of private institutions like banks and stuff and city governments, state governments, and all these countries will start just like massively hemorrhaging money. But I think that in the future, this is a huge risk because like, having everyone use dollars and having everyone accept America's like financial, power and going along with our sanctions is a tremendous amount of power they're probably going to lose in the future. And you're right, this is kind of like the downfall of every major empire once they start fucking with the value of
Yeah,
their long
right.
term, their ability to borrow and their
Yeah.
interest rates. So
Now, I've heard some people speculate that like the strategy is to basically downgrade the dollar just so that the debt doesn't mean as much anymore. Like if we really downgrade the value of the dollar, like $40 trillion might be like $30 trillion. And like they're basically just screwing over the world to take care of the debt on the cheap or something.
yeah, I
Does that
mean,
make
like to
sense to
some
you?
extent, Yeah, that makes perfect sense. And, it is a good strategy, right? Like, if you have $100,000 of student debt and there's like 800% inflation and suddenly you're getting paid $32,000 a day, you can pay off your debt really quick. Now, hyperinflation is usually pretty bad. But, is that a good idea? Like, well, if you're going to cut the value of your currency by like 10%, that's probably like not the end of the world. And if you're 10% inflation and then wages start going up and the Fed starts printing money, like you could make your debt service payments much more
Yeah.
manageable.
Isn't that the thing, though? We blame China for doing forever.
Well,
Isn't
that's
that
the
like
thing
literally what
is,
we bitch about constantly?
well, yeah. I mean, you can make an argument that like, okay, maybe the U.S. dollar is, and this goes back into like, okay, there's a kernel of something here with what Trump and his people want, and it's like, yes, it's true. China and other countries have been basically fucking with the value of their currency for a long period of time. China's been doing it specifically so that their exports to countries like America appear and are cheaper, in nominal value
Mhm.
to other consumers abroad, so they can sell more shit because they don't care about the financial value of all these transactions so much as they care about keeping their people employed and keeping their factories humming. And they're trying to dominate more industries and have higher market share so they can grab everyone by the balls, which we're allowing them to do constantly. So, is the, as usual, I think that the administration's chosen solution is often not the best one. Like, for example, if we really cared, we could basically do things to try to force and convince and motivate and influence China to stop devaluing their currency, the yuan, so that, like, their value does float up to where it should be. That would actually have a pretty positive effect on the euro and the dollar. They wouldn't be so cheap. The value of their exports would go down, or it'd be more expensive for Americans to buy. It would help American
Yeah.
manufacturing. Like, if that's what you want to do, like, that is a much better solution than just fucking like shooting your own currency in the
Yeah.
face repeatedly. I
Yeah.
mean, like, if you think about it, like, okay, like, what's the goal? Or we want to cut the value of our debt in half by having like 50% inflation. Okay, well, yeah, the last president just fucking lost because of, the price of everyday goods. So if we're like, okay, like the
Yeah.
tariffs, you know what I mean? Which, by the way, I found out something very funny recently was that apparently companies, and I did not know this, companies can write off the price of tariffs. So when they say we're making all this fucking money from the tariffs, it's not true. They're making it now, but all those companies are going to
On the
pay less
back
in
end, they
taxes.
don't pay the taxes.
Yeah.
Oh my
Yeah.
God, that's
So they're
great.
literally taking a money that would have gone to just like the IRS from like corporate taxes or putting it in the tariff bin. Look at all this money. And then their corporate, tax bank account or whatever bin goes down. So that's wild. But
So basically, the only people that get fucked are just American consumers because everyone else gets an out.
well,
That's
and the other
funny.
thing too is like, everyone's talking about, is the Supreme Court going to make it unconstitutional? Like, is this idea that you can tariff based on national security, blah, 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 all the rationales they've been given. If it's unconstitutional and they're like, well, the US government needs to give the money back to all those companies. It's like, hey, I still fucking paid more for everything. And we, the consumer, don't get anything. So
Yeah,
yeah,
right.
that's one of the things they're
So,
saying is like, in the
yeah.
future, if they do this and the government or the Supreme Court says the federal government has to give all the money back, we're going to have a massive stimulus as every fucking company in America, every publicly traded company is about to get a giant fat
Yeah.
stimulus of money.
So basically, that would be tax dollars. So Americans would get fucked a second time. Like, not only do they have to pay more because of the tariffs, but they're using tax dollars that they increase the budgets and they've already been spending this money. So when the government gives back all that tariff money that ostensibly they raised for the deficit, we're getting fucked a second time with the same amount of money because we got to give all. So we paid more for the goods, and then the extra money that the tariffs, what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
anyway, anything else on that before we go to Minneapolis? You want to talk
No.
about that?
Yeah.
Okay. What did you make of Minneapolis? We haven't talked in a while, but it's interesting. The two murders, kind of Christy Nome and Stephen Miller, were all pointing fingers at each other the other day. Holman, I think Stephen Miller said something like our policies weren't being followed. Christy Nome said that everything she did was on the she basically said the explicit instruction of Donald Trump and Stephen Miller. Do you think anyone will be fired for this? Will anybody face consequences? How do you rate Susan Collins' troubled
Yeah.
leader?
She's, yeah. Do I don't know if anyone will get fired. It'll be surprising. Trump doesn't like to fire people. You would
There's
think.
a lot of buzz about Chrissy Noem just being a total incompetent idiot. Like Tom Tillis, Republican senator from North Carolina, had a video the other day where he was calling her just so incompetent, and he was like basically about to get into his car, and he like stood out of it for like 5 minutes just to basically rant about how incompetent and horrific all these policies are, and how just Christy Noem is just like, you didn't say this, but implied that she's just like a total idiot that doesn't deserve to be in that role.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. What was she, like, a governor before or something?
Governor of
Like,
South Dakota
yeah, not
or
that,
North
like,
Dakota, one of the Dakotas.
yeah, not that every governor is, like, obviously smart or anything, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know how, like, incompetent she is at her job. Like, obviously, she's bad at, like, not looking evil, and obviously the things that they're doing is kind of evil, and they're like, the lying. I don't know. Is it incompetence or just like complete immorality? Like the fact that like someone shoots someone and before you have any idea what the fuck happened, you're like, this is terrorism. That was a liberal terrorist. They're
Yeah.
trying to kill everybody. And it's
Yeah.
like, why are you saying that? So like,
Well,
maybe it's like,
I think Republicans are also citing the fact like judges are getting really mad, and ICE has apparently like flagrantly like disobeyed direct court orders like 100 times or something like that recently. And so there's a lot of judges that are getting mad. Obviously, the law is being broken, and then I think there's just a lot of Republicans in Congress that are like, "Holy shit, I cannot defend this on the campaign trail later this year."
yeah, I mean, I wish they would step up and do something like, there's just so much dumb shit going on that like, if you're a US senator, like, I mean, I heard a clip of like Ted Cruz saying like, oh, I think like Trump is misguided. He doesn't know like how this is coming off to the American people. And it's like coming across to the American people, they're fucking shooting people. Like, that's not just like an optics thing. Like,
Yeah,
they're just
it
trying to
is
make us
literal
look
loss of
bad.
life.
Yeah. And like, if they say this came direct, all these orders to be extra tough and shoot people or whatever, and it's coming directly from Donald Trump, like that's a pretty big indictment. So is maybe Christy Nolan's not as incompetent as she is. She's just being forced to do things against her will because Stephen Miller is such a gargoyle. Which again, if that's really true, you should fucking quit instead of like being in charge of the organization that's shooting American citizens in the street. And that's like the fucking funny thing. It's like it's like there should be pride in being an American citizen, and like the fact that like if you go abroad, your country should have your back and be willing to get you out. You know what I mean? Like, if there's a disaster in another country, like the State Department, like, does text people, you can sign up for shit. They'll help, organize. And it's like, that's what the US government should be. And they shouldn't be shooting people in the streets of our own country. That's my soapbox. I'll get
Sure,
off
yeah,
now.
sharp. Yeah, hot take
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
Do you think Kash Patel and Pete Hegseth are a little relieved that the pressure's off of them after all of their kind of fuck ups and stuff? Now that Chrissy Noem and Stephen Miller are kind of in the hot seat?
Yeah, I mean, probably. Isn't that funny? It's like it's just a revolving hot seat of who's in the most shit from like doing the
Yeah,
dumbest thing. Like,
right.
I mean, some of these people are like barely even doing their jobs. Like Kash Patel, like all the stories are just endlessly funny about how he's having people drive him and his like
Yeah.
girlfriend or whatever.
Did you hear
around.
the latest one that he was doing like a Five Eyes conference or something, and his people were very concerned about like not having activities for them to do. Like he wanted to take a helicopter tour, and like this is the Five Eyes. We're talking about like the most sensitive like intel of all the top Western countries, and he's like he basically treating it like a work vacation kind of.
Yeah,
Kind of embarrassing. Just like the head of MI5 having this young guy that is famous for essentially like writing a book about the president being a fairy tale king, and that's what got him in Trump's good graces. And now he's like really worried about his girlfriend having a good time in London while they're all meeting and talking about such serious like national security stuff.
yeah, but again, she's a country star, right? And she's done more for America than most people in there could ever
Yeah,
dream in their lives.
right.
Like, can you imagine like Bob Mueller, like someone else who's run the FBI, doing like
Yeah,
any of this shit? Like,
Bob Mueller, he skipped a Five Eyes conference because he wanted to go paintball.
yeah. I mean, it's like
laser tag was going on.
yeah. I mean, that's the sad thing about this country is just the extent to which we used to have like serious people. Like, it's
Yeah.
like all politicians lie sometimes, but like it's like not orders of magnitude more than every other. It's like they don't
Right.
just make up shit and lie about everything. We used to have serious people have like actual serious debates and cost benefit analyses, and now it's just like I don't know.
Now it's like what will go good on a YouTube clip or something, like what will go viral on Twitter.
Well, and they lie about things that like they don't even need to lie about. Like nobody would have batted an eye if Kristi Noem said this just happened an hour ago. We're getting reports. We're
Yeah.
not going to say anything.
Right. Like, why do they just
Yeah.
come forward and just say all this shit? They just are reflexively fascist, kind of.
Yeah, yeah, reflexively fascist, reflexively, MAGA, reflexively like hyper partisan to save
Yeah.
their own skin, and well, I guess a lot of maybe save their own jobs, I guess, but yeah, having an incompetent fuck up on national TV that makes everyone pissed off at you and the administration is not a great way to try to save your job.
Right. Let's see. The Alex Pretty murder was really kind of an interesting one, and I've seen a lot of people
Interesting
talk.
in what way?
Well, like I've seen a lot of people talk about this in terms of him being like a real alpha male. And it's such a juxtaposition that you get all these conservatives that are just constantly bitching about alpha males and masculinity. And there's a masculine crisis and men need to be men. And here is Alex Pretty, who's like literally his entire career is helping, what was he, an ICU nurse helping wounded veterans,
And
essentially.
signed up after COVID,
After COVID, yeah.
yeah,
So he's literally giving his life for service, and like Scott Galloway always talks about, like that masculinity being like taking care of more people than take care of you, or doing more for other people than they do for you, and that's clearly a case with Alex here. And on top of that, he was literally kind of like picking up a woman and defending her that just got battered by an ICE agent, right? And then he got sprayed in the eye with mace or whatever. And it's interesting because a lot of people have been kind of ranting about this, just that Republicans are so obsessed with masculinity and being alpha males, but like across the board on everything with MAGA and these culture wars, right? Like Trump's impeachment, the only people in the Republican Party that went up and told the truth about Trump being just like a crazy lunatic that needs to be impeached were women, right? It was Cassidy Hutchinson. Like, I mean, now it's been a few years. I can't remember everybody, but like all the Republicans that were
yeah,
willing to stand up were just women. So it's like and it's like the same thing with the libertarian people and the Second Amendment people, the Gadsden flag people that don't tread on me.
yeah.
They're all just bootlickers. Like they're basically saying tread on us harder, daddy. And it's you've heard a lot of people rant on this, but I mean, we should bring this up probably pretty frequently. Just keep it in people's memory. Just what utter like beta losers so many Republicans are when they never shut up about masculinity. It's not masculine at all.
Yeah, it's that, and I would say it's coupled with the observation. I've been talking about this a bunch to you, I know, but like Robert Kagan's book about liberalism or illiberalism in the history of America, and it's just like there's a giant group of people in this country who have just always been a liberal or only liberal when it suits them. Like, for example, the people who signed the Declaration of Independence, who read the lines like all people are created equal, and then
Yeah.
immediately turned around and said, "Fuck, not if it's hurting my pocket," and then
Yeah.
and
And
then
then slaves get back to work.
yeah, and then 80 years later, the idea that like, oh, maybe we'll be a liberal country where people actually are created equal. They're like, nope, I'm gonna go fucking pick up a gun and I'm gonna march to Virginia and like fight the U.S. Army. And it's like, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's just a lot of people who are illiberal. They hate everything about America unless they're getting everything they want in that moment,
Yeah.
and they're willing to just shun everything away. I mean, you see that Republicans in Congress, like they're so they won't even be bothered. They'll make 330 million Americans' lives immeasurably worse by just to avoid a tweet. And it's like, what a
Yeah.
lack of courage, what a lack of
Yeah.
conviction,
No
and it's just like,
spine.
yeah, I mean, you either care about liberal values or you don't, and a lot of people just don't. And like, obviously Democrats aren't always perfect, and like this is not, but it's highly asymmetric, right? Like Democrats can be pissed off when Trump is doing dumb stuff and Republicans are in office, but from our Democratic perspective, Republicans are doing dumb stuff, and like Trump is just actively lying about stuff, and like the fact that you say, oh, Trump's a liar, and you're like, oh, you've got Trump derangement syndrome. It's like, no, he fucking lied. He just told a
Constantly.
goddamn lie. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's like, yeah, and it's like, when Republicans are in office, Democrats talk shit like, oh, I hope the economy tanks, Trump's an idiot, blah. But like, most people who are actual liberal people who value stuff like aren't like, I hope 100 million people get sent to the gulags and like, oh, let's kick them
Yeah.
out, let's send them to a
Right.
concentrate. Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I don't know. That's
Do
a
you,
long
are you,
tirade,
do you
but
ever think? Do you think there will ever be an equal and opposite reaction to that, like a MAGA on the left that just gets like French Revolution, like roll out the guillotines, kind of? And I'm
I mean,
not
that's
saying
the
like
thing. It's
conservatives aren't
happened, right?
quite there, but I guess you could kind of argue it's getting there. The way so many Proud Boys and like conservatives are joining up with this like blatantly fascist private military force that apparently is so loyal to Donald Trump they even specify their training schedule to 47 days because obviously 47 Trump's number. Like
That's
I don't know.
dumb.
Should conservatives be worried about some kind of like insanely rabid reaction to all of their insane nationalist belligerence?
Well, I hope not, and I hope it's nothing like the French Revolution that
Yeah.
went so well. But
Yeah.
no, I mean,
Right.
like the reality is like Democrats talk shit and they're mad and like blah blah blah. I'm going to move to Canada, but they don't, and like they're not going to. Democrats aren't at least. Maybe I don't want to speak too soon, right? But like I think it's just probably a reality that you're not going to have a January 6th type event from angry Democrats like going to Washington D.C. and trying to burn down the Capitol.
Hmm.
But like we saw that on the right, we saw that from
Yeah. Right.
the political movement that currently occupies the White House and dominates
They'll do
the
it again, I'm
Congress.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
I
so
was
to your
thinking.
point though, do I
Yeah. Go
think like
ahead.
there will be like a counter revolution or anything like that? Like, no, I don't think so. I think, I brought this up one time in the past and we didn't really talk about it very long, but it was like, would Trump be the kind of person who would lead like a Maoist type like culture revolution? And like the more I think about it, like, yeah, he is trying to do that. Like he would run one right here while he's in the fucking White House for sure. Like
Yeah.
if he thought he could get away with
Are
it.
you
And
surprised he hasn't tried like a Trumpler youth yet? Like
yeah,
has some youth.
Trump, Trump youth. Well,
Yeah.
well, and the funny thing is that would be so funny because like all the Epstein bullshit, like
Yeah.
if Trump started like
Yeah.
a Hitler or Trumpler, like young women's, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
but yeah. What was I going to say? No, that's like the thing, like all this conversation reminds me of the thing, like, and I'm going to compare this to like people who believe in UFO aliens. Like I was watching this like Joe Rogan podcast with Dan Aykroyd a couple years ago. And like, you
Yeah.
listen to him talk and like, he believes every goddamn story. It's like, yeah, these people, aliens came in the middle of the night. They took me to Venus and I had sex with all their women. And then Dan Aykroyd's like, I don't know why he would lie about that. And it's like, really? But anyway, so the point I'm trying to make is like, it's like, I've been comparing that to like, basically like people who think everyone has Trump derangement syndrome and specifically people who are like, oh, Trump's playing 5D chess. And it's like, when Trump lied, he was playing 5D chess. When Trump lied about the lie, and then
still, all chess all the way down, buddy.
Yeah, and it's like the same thing. It's like, okay, tariffs. He's going to increase tariffs. It's national security. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
What's a national security? Oh, the threat of a danger.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay. And then it's like,
Yeah.
well, it must be genius. It must be 5D chess.
Yeah.
I don't know why Trump wouldn't be playing 5D chess. And it's like, really? You haven't noticed him do anything stupid in the last 10 fucking years? He's been in like,
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think about that? Like,
kind of going off that. Yeah, it's funny with all the lies, like it's all 5-dimensional chess, but like for months they were saying Venezuela, we need to take care of the situation because they're killing, like in their words, millions of Americans every year with drugs. And then as soon as we get rid of Maduro and start stealing the oil, bam, no more bombings in the sea, right? We're not killing any more fishermen. The drug problem is no longer a thing that we need to be concerned about. And we're just siphoning off, 30%, 40% of the Venezuelan oil profits.
Yeah, and that's the annoying thing for someone like me, like I shouldn't say ideological, but like, someone who believes that like the global order should prop up governments that like do well and then probably aggressively do things to undermine governments that do poorly. And like, I'm not saying like the Iraq war was a good idea, but like the idea that you'd take an evil dictator who kills tens of thousands of people, fucking send in a helicopter
repeatedly,
team and
like
fucking
decade after decade.
Yeah, I mean, like, Venezuela, like that was a perfect opportunity. You go in, you take the leader out, you say, all right, we're fucking coming back unless you guys go to democracy. Like, we'll have elections, we'll support you. Here's a bunch of fucking money. We'll send people down. This is a safe environment. We'll invest in your infrastructure. Why don't we make, the GDP per capita of all your people go from like nothing to like 20,000? Venezuela used to be a pretty rich country. It was one of the richest countries like in South America and pretty well off compared to the rest of the world, especially in like the 90s and stuff. So like, I don't know. It's just like I have no political home of people, or I don't know, ideological home of people like Iraq war. We can never do anything. We should never intervene. Like sovereignty is the most important thing. And it's like, okay, so we're going to stand by of every bad thing that happens around the world. And it's like, no, I think sometimes like a single aircraft carrier and a credible commitment or threat to like say, if you don't stop, we're going to bomb you. And then you actually like stop tens of thousands of people from dying. I don't know. It's like, and then you get the opposite, which is like America first. We're not going to do anything ever. And it's just like, yeah, I don't know. The global internationalist in me of like, the 1940s to the, 1990s basically is the movement's kind of dead. There's no one who really espouses that. Everybody's in for their own ideological beliefs and no one actually cares about about democracy or human rights or liberal values, and no one's willing to do anything to make anyone else, it's like, I say this a lot, like every social sciences things they've just figured out, right? Like economics has figured out that like tariffs are not particularly helpful and free trade is just generally better. Like it gets complicated when you've got countries like the communist CCP fucking everything,
Yeah, right.
unfairly trading, blah, 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 blah. But like one of the things like, political scientists have figured out, or, philosophers or social scientists, like democracy and human rights are just better. Like, are we going to fucking act like that? Are we just going to let half of the world like just not be democratic, not like respect human rights, not respect LGBTQ rights, not respect women, not respect any number of other things, and just like ruin like hundreds of millions of people's lives around the world for eternity because sovereignty? And I don't know, what's your reaction to that?
Well, I mean, it sucks like how much of that in the world. I mean, and this is something that I guess you could feel patriotic as an American. Like for so many decades, we have been the kind of guarantor of peace. We protect all the sea trade lanes. We've intervened in all kinds of countries from like Kosovo, like all kinds of human rights issues. Like USAID was giving so much money to the poorest people and keeping literally tens of thousands of people alive every single year for a super low rate of our total budget and everything like that. But like, what anymore can do that if it's not America, right? It's not like Germany and Britain and France are going to start investing just billions of dollars around the world to help end world hunger
Well,
and like end diseases. Like they don't have the money for that.
I
Or
mean, I'll
could
see.
they and should they? Like, I guess in a way, if you look at it, like Europe has more people than us. They're like as developed as us, and many countries are happier, more developed. They don't have quite the individual population that we have, but I guess you could conceive of Europe more federalizing itself like we have with the states and becoming a bigger cohesive bloc that could take over world fairs and become the new police guarantees, right?
Yeah, in a way. I mean, to some extent, like it would be, that's like, again, the kernel of a good thing that's happening right now is, Trump's rather extreme actions
Yeah.
around the world, convincing European countries they do need to get their act together. And,
Well, do you think that's
we'll
a way
see what
to?
happens.
Do you think that's kind of a way to strongman like what Trump's doing? And I'm not saying I think Trump's a fucking idiot. He has no clue what he's doing. But I think the net effect of his chaos making so many other countries, especially in Europe and like the other Western liberal democracies, making them try like actually figure out like, oh, we need to defend ourselves. We need to be more cohesive. We need to have more unified economic, financial, political, and military kind of power and or projection, right? Like, I guess could you make a like maybe 50 years out, would historians look back? And I don't know if they would give Trump credit because he's such a fucking idiot and like he's obviously going to kill more Americans and maybe try to end our democracy. But like in terms of like the grand geopolitical historical record, like is this maybe a good thing that kind of power and the kind of hegemonic moral power of the world is shifting to kind of like the Western liberal democracies based mostly in Europe?
Yeah, I mean, we'll see. Like, Trump's kind of on the precipice of like what you might call in strategy a pivotal mistake or pivotal
Yeah,
error.
right.
Like,
Yeah.
basically fucking over the entire American banking industry, financial power around the world because like he wanted to just make our debt marginally more manageable.
Yeah.
And then like, things
When
like,
the Brazilian president insulted him somehow.
yeah, yeah. And like, if he was gonna like leave NATO for good and NATO collapses, like that would be a pretty big error and self-owned. But like, yeah, I mean, like, there's a possibility that
Do you think it would just be inevitable that Europe would just keep NATO? It would basically be the same thing, but just, you get UK, France being the backstop for a while Germany rearms and everyone else starts sending more money to a kind of revitalized and more federalized EU system based in Brussels or wherever maybe they shift it?
yeah, I mean, I think it would be good for the world, like just in a logical kind of, if you take a step back, like, the fact that like America is the sole country that can move like soldiers to another country and like get
Yeah.
intelligence around the world. There's things like European countries apparently can't like really refuel their own aircraft very well in the air. Like they almost always rely on American tanking, especially for like NATO
Hmm.
related missions. And so like that's a problem. I mean, you look at the air forces and armies of other countries in Europe, and it's like kind of astounding. It'll be like, a country with like 300 aircraft, and you're like, we have more aircraft on our like aircraft carriers, and that's not even our air force. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
so like, to some extent, like a lot of countries don't have the power to do anything. So it would be a good a positive benefit for the world if more countries that care about human rights and liberal values can have like the military muscle and clout and ability and capability and credibility to actually do anything about any. Like we've talked about that before. Like the UK, Germany. I mean, they can't do anything. Like
Yeah.
they couldn't do
They can't
like
project force. They can't
yeah,
intervene in whole countries.
yeah.
They
They
can't kidnap leaders of
yeah.
any countries with no casualties, probably.
Yeah, and that's not to like say I mean, their militaries are just small. They haven't been spending enough money. It's not like robust enough to basically do some of these missions. Like they struggled with Libya. They needed American
Yeah.
intel. They needed American tanking, I
But
believe.
theoretically, it should be easy for them to kind of like turn themselves into even supersede American power and wealth, right? I mean, they have 450 million people to our 330, so they have way more people. They'd obviously have to have like a giant revolution in a lot of their like government safety nets and like
Well, in
social
regulatory
contracts and things
states,
like
which is
that. Yeah,
they'd have to cut regulations, which I don't think they want to do. And like, some of it, like we've talked about that before, how it was kind of a weird bet that like most of the world would probably be like, yeah, maybe we should cut down on carcinogenic chemicals. And the rest of the world went, fuck you, Europe. And then like, we're going to keep
yeah.
making them. And so that part's weird. So
It's
like, yeah,
freedom to poison yourselves with cancer with long
yeah.
term ailments based off of slightly cheaper fertilizer.
Yeah, and like I think there is something to the fact that like America is a unique country, at least economically, and not that we're the only industrious people in the world. Like there are others, but like America has quite a few, I guess you could call them like characteristics or attributes between our culture, our people, our history, our geography, our natural resources, et cetera. Like I think like one of the, it's like the quote like misattributed or allegedly said by Bismarck that like God loves drunks, babies in the United States of America. And
Yeah.
it's like, that's to some extent, that's like true. It's like the rest of the world,
Yeah.
like, people joke about how many American presidents have been dipshits and like, not literal dipshits, but like, the things they do politically, geopolitically, like no big picture, no strategic thinking. It's like, most European countries for centuries, if they had some of the caliber of some of our presidents,
Yeah.
would not exist at
Yeah.
all.
Right.
Like, and that's just a fact. So like, do I think Europe will ever catch America or be stronger than America economically or militarily? Like, probably not. And I don't think they need to be because like I said earlier, like for most issues, we are aligned. Like even Trump is aligned on most issues with Europe. He doesn't like them because for some reason he prefers, Putin and Xi Jinping, but that
And
doesn't mean
Lukashenko.
if like you want to do business, like Europe is a huge market and they like doing business with Americans. They like buying American shit and we like buying their shit. And
Yeah.
like we have cargo ships going back and forth, not as much as China, obviously, but like, they're a big player. And so I think in the long run, in the long turn of history or whatever, it might appear, depending on how the next 10 years go, it might appear that there were some positive things that came out of the Trump administration. But, before we get into Trump derangement syndrome or 5D chess, it should be noted that if NATO survives Trump, it is not from Trump's trying to destroy it from
Yeah.
within,
Right.
obviously. Yeah. And like, if he doesn't end up taking Greenland, it wasn't 5D chess to get them to spend 5% of their GDP on their military. It's because he wanted it and they said
Yeah.
no. And he didn't actually want to go kill some like Danish soldiers on the snow in the tundra in Greenland.
Right. Um, like with that, do you think in terms of like this regime change that he's doing, and now he's threatening Iran, obviously, do you think this is something that in the history it could play out well, or is Trump just so fucking stupid and so unfocused and so illiterate on all historical geopolitical things that like he just won't help himself but bungle Venezuela and bungle Iran and screw up their, I guess, kind of like potential democracies that could spring up with Trump's regime change? Because like in
Yeah.
theory, right? Like if you had a president that actually read shit and listened to people and was not a total raging lunatic, like pulling off this regime change in Venezuela, and then, like you said, bringing elections and having like international observers come and protect it, give them a little funding, set themselves off. Like same thing with Iran. If they overturn the Ayatollahs and you actually help fund some kind of return to normalcy, help keep the Iranian government and the Revolutionary Guard from just massacring like tens of thousands of Iranians. Like in theory, like the things he could do would, if like worked out well and didn't turn into quagmires, could be like just beautiful works of geopolitical art, right? But
Oh
I mean,
yeah,
again, I think
absolutely.
Trump is just way too fucking stupid and unfocused, right? Like, I mean, now that he's making money off of Venezuelan oil, does he give a fuck what's going on? He's not tweeting about it, and that what he's tweeting about is kind of the thing that's like directly in his attention, right?
Yeah, no, I mean it's true to some extent. Venezuela like could have been a master class in creating democracy in a kind of Latin American
Yeah,
country in a good way that doesn't make America look bad, but he did it in the worst, most like fisted
yeah,
way. Just said we're in it for the oil, and said that
yeah,
that wasn't 5D chess. He said a lot.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
yeah, or maybe it's 6D chess, and I don't get that sixth dimension. We're just saying repeatedly, no, it's about the oil,
yeah,
but like to some extent, Venezuela is the same state it was before, right? Except now
right.
the military security forces are a little more on edge, right, to protect their people.
Yeah,
Because like it's not even regime change; it's the same regime, and the the vice president just became the president, so it's not even like within outside the bounds of what like was going to
yeah,
happen
right.
legally if Maduro
It's an
had a heart
inside
attack.
hire.
Yeah. The same, like to what I was talking about earlier, and I don't know if you feel the same way about this. Like, I was kind of hoping that Trump, and this is another thing. It's like, come on, guys, like America, like there's a lot of other countries that would like to see Iran and their regime go. Like, we're gonna really do this all alone, and like, hey, not just with Israel. Like, we need to get some
Yeah,
more players.
yeah,
Like, we
right.
can't just do it with Israel. And like, I was kind of sad, not like obviously anything is going to be a humanitarian crisis if we intervene, but like you have the biggest like riots and protests in Iranian like in a long time in Iran, not the biggest in history obviously, but like that's again like Iran is a country that has been like ham-fisted and fucked by its own like ruling class for a long time. They've been destroying their own like people's well-being and futures. Like, granted, like we're not, we're kind of guilty too. We've been sanctioning the shit out of them. But again, like for decades, that was because of like our desire to push human rights and respect for women and stuff like that. So, I don't know what your feelings on it, but like part of me wishes or thinks that like it would be good to try to if we could do some kind of like limited strikes against the Iranian regime and find some way to basically create a new regime or get a new government in there that has at least some desire to try to rejoin the normal community of nations. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it looks like. There was, the son of the Shah, I guess, is trying to make himself like an interim leader just to lead into the new elections. Obviously, in a country like Iran, you don't want the Revolutionary Guard and some of the most like religious extremist like vanguard to take over and then just
Well, that would
recreate
essentially
the
be if the IRGCN or whatever, or IRG or whatever, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard just takes over. It's essentially the same regime. So that would be, you wouldn't be able to have like de-Baathification like in Iraq. It would be a very complicated thing, and that's like the one thing that like makes you almost wish like American presidents in European countries like in the 70s, 80s, and 90s had done more, because like a lot of these places like with cartels, with crime, drugs, like maybe that would have happened anyway, but like if we had spent a little more time and effort in the 80s going after like the actual causes of like the drug trade and stuff and doing stuff to try to like cut down demand or like just legalize it,
yeah,
like so many countries would be better off today, which are
yeah,
just like
that's true.
subsumed by gang and drug and cartel violence. And like then you get places like around the world where like the countries like that are run by like an autocratic oligarchic elite or whatever, the military is involved, the military people don't get paid jack shit, so they just start stealing money, they start
Yeah,
making businesses, and then you're like talk about a deep state, like somewhere like Iran, like I'm sure the Revolutionary Guard probably controls like a majority or a huge percentage of the total economy and commerce in
yeah,
Iran, and it's all backroom deals, probably black market trade, like sanctions evasion. So now you've got like this entire apparatus of people in the defense, into the government, into like every little part of the government is basically controlling the economy. So even if you take out the regime, take out the people at the top, like what do you do with all the companies basically part of these black market things and illicit
yeah,
trade? And it's not like you're not going to get like your yeoman farmers like starting a little like business down the street, because there's still going to be protection rackets, there's going to be like anarchy
right.
and stuff. But
Do you think
the
ultimately the tariffs do not work, or not tariffs? Sorry, sanctions. Do you think that sanctions, where you basically just keep isolating the country more and more, and then that country just keeps blaming America and fucking over its people, and the people get poorer and hungrier, and then meanwhile they just get more and more excluded from trade and like the
well, I think
financial systems and things like that? Like, is there a better solution than just sanctioning a government that will just respond to the sanctions by hating us harder and
well, two
like
things.
letting? Yeah, go ahead.
The first thing is like sanctions only work if the government being sanctioned gives a fuck about the well-being of their people, which mostly
Right.
they don't. And then sanctions have a benefit of they work in the sense that like, and I think a lot of people don't understand this or get it wrong. Sanctions work in the fact that you are trying to minimize the economic growth and opportunity and potential of that country, so that even if you can only eliminate 1% of GDP growth per year by your sanctions over 10, 15, 20, 40, 50, 100 years, that country will be like, the power of sanctions is like, if you go back to like, I think it was like, I forget the exact fact, but it's something like if you go back to 1800 and you reduce American GDP growth every year from 1800 to today by just 1%, we would be poorer than Mexico now. So that right there is the
Oh yeah.
logic, the economic logic and the power of sanctions. Like, if you can cut a little bit of economic growth of a country you don't want to
Right.
be, yeah.
But let's say
And
let's say in a situation like Cuba where you've been doing it for like 50, 60 years and the communist government's still there, the people are still poor, they're still blaming us for all of their problems because of the sanctions. Like I
well,
mean, at what point is that kind of tried and done and let's do something else?
Well, what you're trying to do, it's like, they say like war is politics by other means, it's by military means, and sanctions are, politics, but by economic means. So you're really trying to come to a political conclusion or solution or resolution to some problem or some country or spat you don't like, right? So, like, the fact that, like, you sanction a country because like you don't like their government. Well, if you don't like their government, you don't like their government. And like just, the people, that economy growing, like if Cuba had like, if the average Cuban was like, potentially 10 times richer than they are now, right? The Cuban government would be siphoning all that money and doing the things that you allegedly don't like. For example, Iran. If Iran hadn't been sanctioned for decades, like, everyone's talking about all the ballistic missiles they can shoot in countries around them, including Israel and our bases. Like, if we didn't sanction Iran, they would be able to buy and build like not an infinite, but like, orders of magnitude more missiles, ballistic missiles, fighter jets, so the sanctions do work in the fact that like, if we have a government we really don't like and, wants, declares war on people and, death to Israel, like you wouldn't want 40 years later Iran to have been able to trade with the rest of the world. And then suddenly their GDP and their military budget spending is like, 4 times higher than it would otherwise be. So in that way,
Yeah.
it is a success. Now, it's not a success to the political problem because it's an economic tool to try to solve a political problem. Just like when we occupied Iraq and said, we're going to make a democracy in Iraq or Afghanistan. Well, the military is not the tool to be doing that. A bunch of 18-year-old American soldiers patrolling Baghdad streets is not magically going to make Iraq respect women and LGBTQ rights and freedom of expression and, a flourishing democracy. So that's like one of those things. It's like, well, you blame sanctions, like you don't blame economists for this political problem. And the same thing I always thought that about Iraq and Afghanistan. It's like, don't, people say, oh, the US military lost the war in Afghanistan. It's like, no, we fucking waltzed right in. No one fucking stopped us. The thing the military can't do is make the average Afghan citizen think, yeah, I like LGBTQ rights and human rights and
Yeah.
democracy. That
Yeah.
just
And
wasn't
I
going to
respect
happen.
their right to vote for a leader who will rule over me.
Yeah. And then the surge, like, oh, let's add 60,000 more soldiers. Maybe now they'll respect human rights.
Yeah.
Maybe now they'll let women, own businesses and property. Like, nope, that wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, kind of going off of a negative reaction in America. How worried are you that Trump might use the Insurrection Act? Like a lot of people thought he might be kind of gearing toward it in Minneapolis. Do you think there's just another bigger fight further down the road or closer to the election that he's going to basically just accuse like a half the country of being domestic terrorists and kind of
Well,
having open season with ICE?
yeah, they talk about it a lot. So like when they talk about it, like they probably talk about it a
Yeah.
lot. So like there's probably like if you really just step back and like all the people, like would you not, how do you even put this? Would you trust all the people around Trump to not want to do that? Like all of their careers, their lives, their money, their ability to cash in on the American taxpayer, like it's all dependent on Trump. So like if Trump's
Yeah.
about to basically face a Democratic Party that takes control of the House and just investigates and threatens to impeach and every like cabinet
But when you say
official.
it like that, you're making it sound inevitable that he's going to do that.
Well, I mean, it was like, was it inevitable that he was going to do something like January 6th? I mean, he spent the entire time after before the election saying it
Probably,
was
I
going to be
guess.
rigged.
Yeah, I guess probably he kept
Yeah.
talking about it. Be
Yeah.
there. It'll be wild.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's true. That's pretty depressing. Do you think Republicans will rein him in at all, or they're just so like afraid that MAGA cultists will come and attack their children or burn their house down that they'll just do whatever Trump does, no matter how degraded American democracy gets?
Well, I mean, is history any indication of the future? I mean, they haven't done
Let's say
anything.
this. Let's say Donald Trump orders the archivist to grab the real Constitution from the records, and then he tears it up in half. How long do you think it'll take Mike Johnson to tell journalists he's heard about the story and finally has an opinion?
Oh, that's, yeah.
Just tearing the Constitution in half.
Well, that's when they just start running down the hall away from cameras and stuff. So like, oh, I got a meeting. I have a meeting, a really important meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have been seeing more videos of Republican members of Congress just being like booed and shouted out of their own town hall. So that's kind of nice to see. A lot of people are very upset with the Minneapolis murders, you could call it. Um, let's see. Should we be making plans to move to Canada or Europe? Like the Insurrection Act, if that's coming,
You talk a lot of
ICE
shit
is
on the
going to.
internet.
I
With
talk
the
a lot of shit. I feel like, I was thinking about this. I think it's fair. Like, let's say shit hits the fan in America. Like, a lot of countries around the world owe it to America's generosity for decades to take us in, right? To like claim asylum or whatever. Like Canada, like there's a lot of countries
Vietnam,
that really owe us a lot of immigrant, right? A lot of immigration, right?
get on a boat and like try to paddle to Vietnam and be like, let me in.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Or what would be the country that owes us the most? Like France. We fucking we fucking saved you twice. You better let me
Yeah.
in. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe Canada, but is Canada safe? Is Trump going to try to invade him and invade Canada in year 4 of his presidency? While Stephen Miller is basically a de facto president because Trump's like stroked out, and
Well, I heard,
Stephen Miller goes into the White House to talk to Trump and comes out with the orders allegedly from Trump.
yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Hopefully not. I mean, people have talked about it like, oh, there's some provinces in Canada that are looking for independence. Maybe they want to be the 51st state. And it's like, and they talk about that's like such classic human nature. It's like Alberta's got all that oil money, and now they're like, oh fuck, we don't want to pay for all the Quebeckies like
Yeah,
healthcare. Like fuck that. Like we're the only growing province. And it's like how classic human nature. Like oh, we finally got something good going on. Let's fucking leave everyone. Let's kick that ladder behind
yeah.
us. Fucking get down in the hole.
Yeah. Well, it's kind of like the tech bros that are basically building mansions in different islands and islands that they're buying. And it's like, why do you want to live in this world where you're stockpiling all this wealth and food and like arms to be able to survive in like an apocalyptic world where society is like utterly crashed and burned to the ground, right? Like, why would you want to live in that world? And why do you feel good about participating in that end, right? I always think about that, like the zombie invasion. Like if people like or if a nuclear war like ends society, like I feel like I would surprise people how quick I would like just kill myself and be like fuck it, not doing it, not living in the woods, I'm not burying my shit because like marauders are out there trying to kill everybody and steal all their resources. Like if society doesn't get up and running again pretty quick, like I do not want to participate. Like I'll even do it right next to another tribe. I'll be like, you can eat my body, save all the protein you can, it's going to get worse out here, use my bones for projectile weapons to defend against all the other murderers trying to steal everyone's resources. So like the idea that like these billionaires are just like siphoning off all this wealth to live in like some gated island bunker, really fucking weird.
Well, it's ironic too because they're actively creating the means by which we get to that future.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah, right.
like does
Like
anyone have
crashing
more?
our economy by putting the entire stock market in these fanciful data centers and these AI, this race to get like the singularity and AI that may never happen, but will burn all the wealth of the country to try.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, well, I saw something funny. Like you just brought up AI, and like apparently, like people at OpenAI were floating like the U.S. government like preemptively bailing out OpenAI and like saying that America needs to invest in
Just bailing out
OpenAI.
all those fucking idiots that just bought into a pipe dream and wasted all their money investing in something that will not make them any profit in the long run if it
Yeah,
fails.
yeah. I mean, it's obviously a Ponzi
Isn't it,
scheme.
that would
Like,
be welfare for the rich, wouldn't it? Fuck those people.
yeah,
Welfare queens.
yeah, and giving $1 trillion of tax. Well, we're $40 trillion in debt. Well, let's give it another trillion to fucking Sam Altman because he built the biggest Ponzi scheme in the history of the planet. Like, congrats.
Yeah, right. Um, Kind of speaking of Ponzi schemes, it was just announced. I don't know how true this is, but people were talking that Elon Musk is reportedly thinking about combining Tesla, SpaceX, and whatever that third company is. What Tesla, SpaceX? I forget. There's a third company anyway,
Is it a
but
robot one or whatever?
Yeah, but doesn't that seem like he's just hiding his like financial problems? Like Tesla just announced they're stopping one of their models. Their models are woefully obsolete. They just burn so much money making that Cybertruck that people don't want, and it's just like a giant clusterfuck. And then on top of that, like he just his stock prices are so out of whack because he just keeps promising like for the last 10 years that everyone's going to have a robot, like a personal robot helper. There's going to be a million robo taxis with Tesla emblems on them
Well,
like
all he's
next
doing,
year.
yeah, he's just trying to keep the hype going because he has to have some justification for the valuation. So saying that you're going to sell X number of millions of any product is a great way to be like, oh yeah, my forward
Right.
earnings are going to be really high when I sell
Because
millions of
that, but
robots.
does his move of like combining all the companies make it seem like he's just trying to do sleight of hand with the accounting books, and that like he's actually really fucked? And now that
Oh
like
yeah.
X is not as profitable as he hoped, and he still owes so much money on it, and Tesla now is tanking worldwide. Like, doesn't it just seem like he's just basically like bailing out water of a sinking boat?
Well, it makes me wonder because, like, normally mergers and acquisitions happen because you're going to get some kind of synergy between the two companies. So, like, Tesla and like SpaceX, like, they're not exactly the same, and like they're already owned and run by Elon Musk. So, like, whatever synergies could exist, like, couldn't Elon Musk kind of like just make it
Yeah.
happen? Like, do I think there's any value to it? Like, I think there's probably far less. Plus, most mergers and acquisitions like end up hurting, like, don't work out, and they call it like goodwill on the accounting books. Like they call it goodwill, and
Hmm.
goodwill is basically like the amount of money you spent for the merger beyond what you can actually credibly say is on the books of assets and value. So that
Hmm.
goodwill is like a plug basically. But yeah, I don't know. I think like eventually it's going to crash and burn. I think he just wants to hit $1 trillion, and then I don't know what that'll get him. It won't make him happy.
And then what?
Whatever he's searching.
Sell out, retire, say I'm going to go focus on other things, and then all the companies come crumbling down.
Yeah, yeah, he could retire and then just let the next CEO just like basically like be the person trying to put out a giant fire with a little squirt gun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's what it would. I mean, they're ridiculous valuations. Like the PE ratios are absurd. Like they're worth so much more than like any like credible. Like if it were any other company besides something run by Elon Musk, any rational analyst would be like, "This is fucking stupid." Like
Yeah.
there's nothing to it except that people like Elon Musk. So yeah, I don't know.
And it's basically a meme stock that just so many people have so much money in it now that they're just basically diamond hands and holding out as long as possible.
Well, that gets into the responsibility thing because, like, you see this with all the people with, like, you saw this with social media companies, like, they're all frantically trying to do things that, like, will justify their absurd valuations. Like, for social media companies, like, once you get to 1 billion people, like, you can't just keep adding 1 billion people every year. So,
Yeah.
like, your valuation must go down. And it's like, I don't know. Yeah, there's a lot going on, like, accounting wise, financial valuation. That's just absurd.
Yeah. Going on to the next topic. Epstein. um, I think Trump has like kind of distracted from the Epstein stuff. Like there was really a fever pitch, and then the Venezuela thing, the Iran bombing and threats, and then now all the Minneapolis stuff, and of course Greenland. Do you think that that is his plan? He is just distracting, or is he just like a child, like a toddler, just going from one toy after the next? Because Stephen Miller just keeps putting like interesting like photos and memes of him being like, the greatest president ever, thanks to conquering Greenland and Canada and, regime change in all these places. Such a genius. We all love President Trump, 99% approval ratings, right? Or like all the garbage that he probably consumes. Do you think it's a distraction or,
I mean, it has to be, right? Like, there's a federal law that says they have to give up all the documents, and they didn't do it.
and they have
Like,
it?
if
Yeah.
there's nothing there, why didn't they do it? Like, the logic of it, like, call that 5D chess. I don't see that one
Yeah.
either.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I guess that might be that might be checkers that just fuck you. I'm not giving it. Yeah.
Yeah, I
Um,
won't give you the queen piece. I'm
yeah.
not gonna
Yeah.
do
Right. I'm not,
it.
yeah, I'm not queening your piece. I just wanted to point out too, like that I've been saying this a little bit, but like the idea that the story came out that the spa girls were going to Jeffrey Epstein's mansion for like private visits, and like I guess we don't know if it was just to Epstein or maybe other people were there too, but like Trump's employees regularly going to the mansion of a notorious sex trafficking pedophile rapist. How is that not textbook sex trafficking from Trump himself? His
Or
employees
suspicious.
are regularly going to a notorious rapist house for years, right?
I mean, Yeah, I mean that's
I
a
don't know. It's like
yeah.
what are we like? What are we doing here? Like, yeah, I don't know. Like the way the mainstream media just gives up on this and gets distracted, and for years has not really investigated all these irregularities, like the sweetheart deals for all these people, all these billionaires that are being protected even now, all of the documents not being released. Like it just makes you think that all of these media companies, like all the CEOs and stuff, are just all people that for like the last 20 years have been like cultivated by Epstein. Like whatever this sex trafficking ring is, obviously there's a lot of rich people in it. There's obviously politicians. There's maybe even like foreign, like surveillance, uh, like Mossad or the
Well,
FBI
yeah.
or CIA or whatever involved. Who knows the extent of this? But obviously it's happening.
Well, there's a lot there, and like that's like the annoying thing about Congress is just the fact that they passed a bill that said they have to release it by like December 20th or
They're
whatever
not
it was.
withholding funds
Yeah.
or stopping
No, I
things.
mean,
And
like, honestly, like, if you want government to work and you cared about your job as a Congress member and you cared about Congress and you cared about your own fucking ego and you, like, imagine how popular someone would be if, like, a member of Congress, let's say a Republican, just said, hey, you know what, Trump? We're the fucking Congress and we passed a bill. So you can either do it fucking right now or I will vote to impeach you right now because you are violating the law. Your job is to carry out the Constitution and the laws of this land.
yeah, that'd be
And like,
good.
yeah, and you know, for example, like if I were a member of Congress, I'd say if you're gonna not do a law that I personally fucking passed, I'm gonna vote to impeach you. Like, okay, I'll see you Tuesday when you release all these documents or whatever. It's absurd to me that they don't do that.
Yeah. Well, they're literally afraid of probably being killed by his cultist followers. Um, let's
But
see.
again,
Here's
that's like
another
these
thing.
like 10-year problems. Like, you know, well, if they'd done that like 3 years ago, 5 years ago, you know, none of this would have happened. If you'd set up the Trump a
Yeah,
couple
right.
times early on, none of this would have happened.
And that's something I like right now that a lot of other countries are learning, like calling his bluff and standing up to him. Like, obviously, Europe got him to back down on Greenland, but like Trump will never fucking back down. All these people that go out in public and just suck his dick constantly and just glaze him. And then, like, meanwhile, they go back to their countries and, like, this is horrific. This is horrible. We're losing, like, these tariffs are going to, like, really wreck our economy. Not having like, they know this is a giant problem, but everybody is just sucking up to him so hard when he's a fucking bully. He always tacos when he's going to face some heat or face some blowback or actually have someone stand up to him. So I would like, and like we mentioned this before, like don't all of these business CEOs in the tech world have each other's phone numbers or contact information, or they have like a bunch of staffers that can reach out? Don't all these countries' governments talk to each other? Can't just everybody get together and say, hey, we're not going to be extorted. It's better for all of us if none of us give in, like all the colleges, all the law firms that he was going after. Everybody just get together and say, fuck this guy. We're not giving in to the fucking mob, right? We're not going to pay this extortion money every time. Instead, they all just suck him off and glaze him while he picks off one at a time, like bullying, like conquering by division, right? Dividing and conquering them. It's so annoying that no one has a spine.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. It's
Like Tim
infuriating.
Cook. Tim Cook went to the premiere of the Melania movie. Tim Cook, who has fuck you money in a company that is what, like the richest company in human history. And he is going to the premiere 3,000 miles away from where he lives. Like he flies there for the special event for what is probably like the most god awful movie ever made, right? To go watch it for 2.5 hours. Like,
Yeah.
what is the point of having that power, that money, that respect around the world, that like
Well,
technological power?
I imagine they have some feeling of responsibility for the thousands of workers they employ. But if I were at that point, I would just probably quit. Like, you know, be the
Yeah.
most. Yeah, I don't know. Well, I got to go, but that's a
Okay.
hilarious note to end on.
Yeah.
But no, I mean it's true. Like there's a bunch of cowards in government, in academia, in law firms, in Congress, in business, everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Closing note: Republicans are cowards, and I hate them all. Fuck the Congress. Thanks everybody for listening to Braid Milk. I'm Dash McIntyre. Let me, if you're interested and you're still here, I've got a bunch of books. I've got satire in the Trump years, and I did a satire in the Biden years, and I got Trump comedy, the best Trump articles. So check those out. If you go to my Substack or really anywhere, I've got my link tree and links to that. So if you like my work with the Halfway Post and the Halfway Cafe here on Substack, and of course this Braid Milk podcast, check out those books. You'll probably like them. Anything you want to plug? You want to plug your Substack? Are you still writing
Yeah,
pretty
I got a
regularly?
Substack, not regularly as much this week, but I'm going to start up again.
Okay. All right,
Yeah.
cool. Stay
Yeah.
tuned, everybody.
On that note.
All right. This is it for Brain Milk. Everybody have a good rest of your week and see you later.